Hey, what's up guys? So today we're going to be talking about Scooby-Doo. So, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Perfection. I've got to say, it's one of the most perfect things I've watched. Now, I'm just gonna say, of course, saying it's one of the most perfect things I've watched, it is very likely it's one of the perfect, or I should say the best Scooby-Doo that I believe there is, and that statement is accurate. It is the pinnacle of Scooby-Doo, and here's why. So, first of all, the characters just seem realer, right? So in this town, they actually have like families, they live in specific places and houses, they go to a common high school, and they have all these things in common, and all the monsters and such, they all appear and have their stories within this town. Of course, with a few exceptions, like the episode with Gator Town, which, by the way, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with that episode for whatever reason. Sorry, one second, I just got a funny text from my friend. Anyway, so yeah, they all just seem realer. Unlike in a lot of other Scooby-Doos, like where they kind of just spawn in to the surrounding area, like they're just like on a permanent road trip always. Like every episode's like they're in the van, they have to stop at some place, and then the plot happens, and then they get back in the van, and then they just keep on going. But where did they come from? And where is their desired destination? We never know. They're just in an infinite loop of taking a break from driving in the van. It's almost, they just aren't like real people, you know? Not saying that I think the typical idea of Scooby-Doo's bad. Don't get me wrong. I love Scooby-Doo. I believe it is a great work of art. But that being said, still, like, they're just not real people, you know what I'm saying? But as I said earlier, in Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, like, they are actually people with common lives, and it just makes it feel more real. Like, they feel like more real people. Other instances of such a thing happening in Scooby-Doo are like in the live-action Scooby-Doo movies, where what was it? I believe the first one was just called Scooby-Doo, and the second one was Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed or something like that. They were good movies, I must say. Obviously they weren't God tier, S tier like Mystery Incorporated, but they were still pretty good. Something that they did was that the characters actually lived in, I believe it was Coolsville.
Thing is, it's all downhill for Mystery Inc.
No! Hey, you're doing that thing again where you take everything I say out of context. You're trying to make it look like I think Coolsville sucks. No! Don't record that!
All Fred Jones had to say was,
I think Coolsville sucks.
And they actually had lives there. And something funny they did was they ended up, and in those two movies, where that I guess they made a career out of mystery solving, even though you don't really ever see any monetary transactions happen with the gang. But still, that kind of seems like what their life is, and it works. Let's see. Another example was this one time I was watching the original Scooby-Doo TV show, and there's this one point where Shaggy needed to, it was the pilot episode, by the way, where it was some play on words about the word night, but basically it was that classic episode where there's the night in the museum and they needed to like solve that mystery, as they do. Anyway, to get into the museum, there was a really high up window. Luckily, Fred had a ladder and a something that hoisted the ladder even farther upward, but it still couldn't reach. So they had Shaggy get on top of the ladder, and Velma stated that he's like one of the best gymnasts in their school or something like that, and they made it up into the window with a big jump. And yeah, it was pretty cool. It was nice seeing that little character development being, even though I would like all of you to know in this whole thing, I do realize that Scooby-Doo was not intended to be taken this seriously, alright? And I hope you know, like as a kid, you sat me in front of the TV, I would watch anything, right? But I still, like, just looking at Scooby-Doo, it's fun to do these analyzing things like this. But anyway, back to my analysis and such. Yeah, the original Scooby-Doo. So what those three pieces of Scooby-Doo all had in common that they did great was the fact that the characters like actually had real lives, unlike in a lot of other instances where the characters kind of just exist in the van and then at stopping locations and otherwise. A contradiction to a lot of the things that I've said so far, and we're not even like that much into it, are the one movie Scooby-Doo Stage Fright and Be Cool Scooby-Doo. I love these two. Okay. But the thing is, they do not go along with what I have said so far, but I can easily overlook that because these Be Cool Scooby-Doo and Scooby-Doo Stage Fright were kind of a satirical take on Scooby-Doo. Stage Fright kind of just making fun of like kind of flaws in the series and just making up other funny instances on its own. But then Be Cool Scooby-Doo just there aren't words to describe what that madness was. All I can say was something else, but wow, it was, to say the least, it was not supposed to be taken seriously, but it was very funny. I'm very sad that it was canceled. I think they canceled it to make that like that. So there's some other Scooby-Doo show going on right now that I haven't been able to look at. Those contradictions aside, moving on. Another great thing about Mystery Incorporated was that it was less cartoony. Obviously, it's a cartoon. You would expect it to be cartoony, but an enjoyable thing of the fact that it was less cartoony, like it was, you could care about the characters more. You could care about the plot more. I'll get into that in a second. And you know, everything actually had like all the decisions and things that happened, like there was actually like some gravity to the situations, and it was really nice. The overarching plot, I loved the fact that it had an overarching plot. Man, it was just really nice in general. Like they started off really episodic and then sprinkled in elements of the overarching story, and then they still had episodic bits later on, but it kind of expanded into the overarching plot a little more, and it was just a great story. I loved the use of Scooby-Doo in a story that's spanned across the whole series, it was really nice to see that. Is series the right word? Should I just say series may apply to like all of Scooby-Doo, but anyway, you guys know what I mean. Basically, as for overarching plot, there's not much you can say there. It was just nice. The transaction and transaction, no, that's not the right word. The transition, the feel, it was great. You typically in a show, you start off, everything's all fresh, and it makes it seem a little more magical. and I believe that it was utilized in this series the best way it possibly could have. They did everything there perfectly, and they even had a little bit of the world building in at the beginning, which is a great thing that they did. They had all that the fresh feels, implemented a good chunk of creating the world and everything that was going on in it, and as the whole freshness and the magicalness of a new concept of a show or something wears off, they are easily able to transition into utilizing the developed world for the story, and I gotta say, it's just perfect, and it really builds up just a perfect story going on. If you're interested in checking out Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, you don't want spoilers or anything, then I suggest going ahead to this timestamp so you don't get any spoilers. As for the rest of you who have either seen it or just don't care, here we go. So the ending, I've got to say, it had a perfect ending. The whole puzzle thing that was going on, and like the whole background mystery, it like building up to a plot, it all making sense, coming together into the whole thing where with the what was it was like a god or a demon. It's been some years since I've seen it, but it was amazing. And I'm getting off topic. Where they get into the cave, they find the thing to the interdimensional world and such, and then they finally like find the god, that like thing in the sarcophagus, and then they have that whole talk with each other about like what is life, what is real, and whatever, getting really philosophical, especially for Scooby-Doo. It hit deep, especially as a child. This may be a little biased because like I saw it when I was a kid, and that in itself, it was amazing, so it may be a little biased, but you know what, that's okay. It was amazing. That's all that matters. Anyway, they release the thing in the sarcophagus, and then they have that final battle. Everything looks so bleak, and then Scooby-Doo pulls off like the MLG no-scope thing with the bow staff into the sarcophagus, and then kills the god demon thing, and then they spawn into the new, like, I wouldn't say spawn in, they return to their world, but like the perfected version of it, and like the town being lovely, everyone's problems being fixed, and they're like, what? This isn't right. It was just amazing. And then they have that perfect last few minutes where they get the call from the guy at the college being like, hey, we need y'all to do some mystery stuff around the world, and then they drive off into the distance to do just very that. Wow, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. I need to watch Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated again. Yeah, that wraps up all that I really have to say about Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Some other good mentions. There are a handful of Scooby-Doo movies that I love. I may just quickly flash a bunch on screen right now, but basically, yeah, I don't, frankly, I don't hear people talk about Scooby-Doo often enough, but like even in that hardly any amount of time that I hear people talk about it, I don't really hear like much about Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. I think it is underrated, very underrated. I know, it's so strange. See, I loved it, my sisters loved it, my parents loved it, we even have it on DVD. Yeah. Well, that's really all I have to say, so I'll let you guys go now. Have a good day and or night. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!